I've talked at length about how much I love the Percy Jackson series on this channel. It's a series that I loved growing up as a kid, and it's a series that I still adore to this day. It sparked my love for ancient mythologies and folklore, and played a pretty major influence on my taste in media. Even though it's a story made for kids in the early 2000s, it still to this day manages to stay timeless and captures new generations of kids and adults alike. While there are many things to enjoy about the franchise, like the great fights, the magical elements, the urban fantasy aesthetic, what really draws you to this franchise are the characters. From the major ones like Percy and Annabeth to even the side characters like Rachel Dare and Sally Jackson, Rick Riordan, at least in his early career, had a knack for instantly being able to make his characters likable or hateable within their first few sentences. Yet despite these fun and interesting characters, I barely see any deep character studies going into the more nuanced aspects of the cast. Because I think when it comes to writing characters for a YA audience, this is some of the best you can get, and it's a shame that it's not really dissected as much as I see with other franchises. Then I remembered the quote, "Be the change you want to see in the world." I've always wanted to try my hand at doing character studies, and I'm very comfortable with the Percy Jackson series, so why not make a series going through every major Percy Jackson character, diving deep into their psychology, character arcs, flaws, etc. Hopefully this will give me a chance to try out this sort of video style, and maybe we'll all gain a new understanding of these characters by the end. And of course, we'll be starting with the main character himself, Percy Jackson, a character that I've grown to feel a deep personal connection with over the last few years of my life. He was one of the first characters I truly felt invested in, but I don't think many base-level readers truly grasp the full scope of his depth and growth. On the outside, arts and edits of Percy would lead you to believe that he's either this super cool badass sitting on a throne with huge muscles and a six-pack, or a super flanderized, sassy swingheart twink guy. You know, the people who will make low-effort compilations of Percy or Tom Holland being sassy for 5 minutes straight or whatever. Which, unfortunately, has become more of the reality with Rick's recent books, but that's besides the point. I think we get so focused on either Percy's many moments of being cool and his many moments of being sweet that we forget the actual journey that he goes on. The development, the overcoming of his insecurities, and realization of his own self. A boy who once thought he wasn't worth anything, who thought he was being punished by the world just for being different. A man who would grow up to find friends, love, and a new perspective of himself, and would one day save the world. This is Percy Jackson. Before we really dive into Percy's character, let's quickly go over the inspiration for him and the wider Riordan verse. Most die-hard Percy Jackson fans probably know this story already, but I'll recount it anyway just so we're on the same page. The story of Percy Jackson was inspired by the bedtime stories that Rick Riordan used to tell his son Haley, a boy with ADHD and borderline dyslexia who struggled with school as well as fitting in with his peers. Sound familiar? He and his father Rick would bond over Greek mythology, a topic that Haley was very passionate about, and thankfully had been a teaching subject for Rick for years. Eventually, once they had gotten through all the stories, Haley had asked his dad if he could make up a new story for him. To which Rick came up with the tale of a boy named Percy Jackson, a demigod in modern-day Manhattan, who went on a quest to save Zeus's lightning bolt, which had been stolen. From there, the rest was history. Now, on the surface level, it'd be easier to say that Percy and the rest of the Half-Bloods in the series are meant to be an allegory for children struggling with ADHD and other learning disabilities. To encourage children who actually have those disabilities in real life that it's okay if you're different. Being different doesn't necessarily make you bad, and it certainly doesn't make you unworthy of love or acceptance of those around you. Rick even admitted that he wrote Percy to be a lot like his son Haley. While all of those things are undoubtedly true, and there's some real merit in those lessons, the struggles both internally and externally that Percy faces are much deeper, and I want to go over Percy's entire story, specifically through the first 5 books, and cover his entire arc beginning to end. We're introduced to Percy at one of the lowest points in his life in The Lightning Thief. He's a social loner who bounces between schools, and he never truly finds his place because he's deemed as a troublemaker. Not to mention his ADHD and dyslexia make it hard for him to pay attention in class. He has an abusive stepfather who treats him like dirt, and for all intents and purposes, everyone except for a few people treat him as if he isn't worth anything. And if you pay close attention throughout the series, this is a mindset that he never really gets over. He has such little value of himself by the time we're introduced to him that When we meet his mom for the first time, he says he doesn't know how she puts up with both him and Gabe. He thinks that through the combined effort of Gabe and himself, that his mom's life just sucks. When Mr. Brunner alludes to the fact that Yancey Academy wasn't a good fit for him, he feels resentment and shame because if even the one teacher who genuinely believed in him didn't think he belonged here, did he truly belong anywhere? Except he does. He goes to Camp Half-Blood, a place filled with outcasts and rejects like him. Kids that were considered oddballs or troublemakers by the outside world all had a place here, where they all fit in. It was here that, even though he had lost his mom prior, he felt like he had finally found a place that he called home, and found people he wanted to protect and be around. Despite the fact that he's quick to anger and is a bit sarcastic, he is a kind soul that cares for his friends and wants to help those around him. And it's here that Percy's fatal flaw comes into play. Athena tells Percy at the end of the Titan's Curse that Percy's fatal flaw is extreme personal loyalty. He would risk the world and his own life if it meant saving just one of his friends. This, I think, can also be tied back to Percy's low self-image. He values his friends' lives over his own to a self-destructive degree. In the first 3 books, Kronos uses this to his advantage, kidnapping his mother, Grover, and Annabeth respectively because he knows that Percy would do just about anything to save them, because to him, they're all he has. These were the people that helped him feel grounded. In a world where even the gods had it out for him just because he existed, it was his family and friends that helped keep him stable, helped him to feel like he wasn't just a waste of space or a mistake. Because of that, he's willing to risk his own life or the world just to ensure their safety. It's also in earlier portions of the Titan's Curse that we see a lot of this behavior. After Annabeth gets kidnapped, he blames himself and believes that it should have been him instead to get captured. Later, when Bianca dies, he again blames himself and thinks that it should have been him to die. And lastly, when it's discovered that Nico is the son of Hades, Percy declares that the prophecy will be about him, because he can't live with the idea of more trauma coming upon him for something that he had caused. Percy's major arc that he goes on throughout the first 5 books is learning to value himself just as much as he values everyone else around him. There's a reason that his personal loyalty is considered a fatal flaw. After Thalia decides not to age when becoming a hunter and Nico runs away, Percy chooses to take up the burden of the prophecy for Nico's sake, to shoulder this burden alone if it means that his friends will live. He carries that mentality through the next 2 books, even when it's alluded to that he might die in the Great Prophecy. He accepts it anyway, because he can't stand to imagine someone else taking it for him. He agrees with Nico to go to the underworld and bear the Curse of Achilles, even though it's called a curse for a reason, and the process of gaining it in the first place is also dangerous. But to him, it's the only way that he can stand up to Kronos, and because he doesn't want to be considered a coward by Annabeth. Ever notice that Percy's opinion of himself is tied to his social standing? In The Lightning Thief, he's just coming off of his broken home life. In Sea of Monsters, the once admiration he had gotten from retrieving Zeus's Master Bolt was replaced with mockery because of his half-brother Tyson. In The Titan's Curse, he feels a subconscious level of resentment towards Thalia because people started to look towards her instead of him. In The Last Olympian, he gets frustrated when Annabeth calls him a coward, and accepts the fact that accepting the prophecy means that he'll likely die in the end. Percy struggles to accept the idea that he has personal value outside of his usefulness as a shield for his friends, as well as a tool for the gods. The Last Olympian is when all this buildup finally comes to the forefront. After 4 books of building up Percy to be the hero of the Great Prophecy, after pages and pages of him rejecting it, fearing it, he finally accepts the role he thinks he's meant to play. Ever since he's entered this crazy new part of his life, he's had label after label thrust upon him. The son of Poseidon, the hero of the Great Prophecy, a problem, all sorts of titles and burdens that he has never asked for. He gains the Curse of Achilles and becomes Camp Half-Blood's #1 line of offense, throwing himself recklessly into harm's way, prepared to save Olympus and die in the process. Because at this point, he's come to the conclusion that if he's going to have this prophecy and burden be put upon him, he might as well own it. If all he's worth for now is to be the hero of this prophecy, even if it means he'll die in the end, at least his life will have some kind of worth to it, to himself and to his friends. Then he talks to Rachel, who through her gift of prophecy breaks the revelation to Percy that, despite what everyone thought, he was not the hero of the Great Prophecy, and was later revealed to be Luke. At first, this upsets Percy. He's bitter because right when he thought he'd become comfortable in his role and had found value in it, it was ripped away from him. He finally found his place in everything, even if it wasn't the one he wanted, just for the rug to be pulled out from under him just as quickly. He's left lost again, confused, unsure of his place in everything again. But then he talks to Rachel again, as well as Hestia, goddess of the hearth, a goddess who, out of the entire pantheon of gods that Percy has met, is one of the few who actually seems to like and respect Percy. A goddess who, despite not showing up until the very end of the series, makes the most impact on Percy and his development. When Percy meets Hestia, she tells him about her story, how she was removed from the original 12, and how she is considered the last Olympian due to her tie to Hearth, to home. This is when Percy comes to the revelation that he's been struggling with his whole life. He doesn't need a label in order to be important or valuable to himself and to others. He doesn't need to throw his life away in order for it to have some kind of meaning. He already has value. As a friend, as a son, as a partner, and as a hero. Sometimes the expectations of life can be crushing and can distract us from what's really important. Our friends, our family. Percy offers Pandora's box, containing the personification of hope, to Hestia as an offering, saying that hope survives best at the hearth. To me, this is Percy recognizing that he doesn't have to bear the world on his shoulders anymore. He doesn't need to recklessly throw himself into harm's way to save his friends. He can put his hope in his friends to help him, to support him. And they can expect him to do the same for them. It's a mutual agreement, not something he solely has to do for them. At the end of The Last Olympian, Percy is offered the chance to become a god and serve alongside his father, and turns it down pretty much immediately. Not only that, but he encourages the gods to make an effort to look after their kids, and to make sure that the minor gods are recognized. While on the surface, this just seems to be a base-level, kind-hearted action from Percy, to ensure that what happened with Luke and the other rejected demigods doesn't happen again. But in reality, I think there's something way more to it. It's rooted deep in his insecurities. Percy, perhaps more than anyone else, knows what it's like to not feel wanted, to feel like he doesn't have a place he belongs. Even though he never went off the deep end like Luke, he knows how they all felt and has come dangerously close to understanding their cause in the past, and doesn't want any other kid to feel like they don't have a place, or feel like they've been ignored. He was able to find a home through Camp Half-Blood, and he wants to make sure that all future demigods are able to do the same. He's become okay with himself. He's found the friends and home he's been wanting, no longer drifting in and out of whether he feels like he truly belongs. He's found friends, love, and family better than anything he could have imagined. And you can see this in future installments of the series. In everything Heroes of Olympus and onward, Percy appears much more lighthearted. He's not as doubtful of himself anymore, and he's found a sense of acceptance with himself. Obviously, there was that whole section of the story in House of Hades where he was going through a bit of a crisis arc, but that book alone is worthy of its own video. As well as Wrath of the Triple-Headed Goddess, where Percy seems to be even more unsure and unconfident about himself than in The Lightning Thief, but again, a video for another day. Percy Jackson is a character that personifies the message of you are never truly alone. Whether you have a learning disability or not, regardless of what labels the outside world puts upon you, it reassures everyone, from kids to guys in their 20s like me, if you think you're not good enough, or don't fit in, or think you aren't worth anything, that there are always people out there that will say the exact opposite. They will respect, love, and care for you no matter what. No matter how lost you think you are, you'll find your home, your hearth. And that, I think, is the true message of Percy Jackson. Thanks for watching.